The bowgun is my favorite weapon in Monster Hunter. It's by far the most straightforward weapon in the game in terms of how you actually play it, and it's often the easiest to play due to the distance that you can keep from the enemy. While mechanically simple though, the intrigue of the bowgun lies in the preparation itself. Monster Hunter has streamlined itself pretty significantly since the original entries, in a way that can sometimes feel like a detriment. You can pretty much drop into any hunt at any time nowadays, and while this is great for multiplayer, the game has lost a feeling of every single fight being an immense struggle that you need to carefully plan around. No more buying pickaxes, no more going on gathering runs to make sure you've got enough supplies, no more swapping equipment around every single fight. The bowgun harkens back to those olden times. You need to bring the right gun to fight the right monster. You need ammo, crafting materials, armor sets for each of your guns. If you enjoy the preparation phase of hunting and are more interested in testing out your various builds than you are learning optimal damage combos, the bowgun might be for you. That's not to say, however, that the bowgun combat isn't fun. It's actually very fun. Because of your massive range, you're always on the offensive, never needing to wait for the monsters to provide you with an opportunity. Light bowguns are highly mobile, allowing you to constantly reposition yourself for the best possible angle, while heavy bowguns trade that mobility for power and special attacks that can save you resources on ammo while also inflicting wounds and stunning monsters. If you're familiar with my Rise guide, you might be noticing that this one is a lot shorter and the music is a lot quieter. I'm still going to cover absolutely everything you need to know. There are no assumptions here that you're familiar with the bowgun at all. In fact, if you are a veteran bowgun user, you might still need this video. Monster Hunter Wilds simplifies almost all of the most complicated bowgun mechanics from previous games. This is the easiest the game has ever been, but it's also the most simplistic. The total number of skills have been heavily pared down, which somewhat consolidates the overall number of builds in the game as well. Veterans of the bowgun are honestly probably going to be really disappointed in this change, but if you're a first timer, there's never been a better time to learn. For most weapons, the path to choosing the weapon that you want to use is pretty simple. You've got your damage stat, affinity, which is your critical hit rate, and your elemental or status damage. Bowguns have additional factors to consider. You have 2 modification slots, ammo capacity, ammo level, rapid fire options, all these things you need to consider when choosing the right weapon for the job. So let's go through each of these elements one by one. Firstly, let's talk ammo types. Every bowgun has access to a limited pool of ammunition types, and you need to choose a gun based on what type of ammo you want to use. You theoretically could mix and match ammo types, but there's not a ton of incentive to do so, and there's 2 reasons for that. Firstly, the ammo capacity of each ammunition type is different. Ammo capacity is how many shots you can fire before you need to reload. For obvious reasons, you want the amount of time you spend reloading to be as low as possible. And if it's not obvious, I guess I should explain it. There are a number of reload animations in the game based on what ammo type you're using. Some of them allow you to move while reloading, in which case you can be semi-mobile. However, a lot of them are going to completely lock you in place, meaning that you're totally exposed to a monster attack if you're in the middle of a reload animation. Reloading is going to prevent you from using the auto guard function on the heavy bowgun. Some reloading animations are also going to prevent you from dodge rolling. And lastly, for every second that you spent reloading instead of shooting, you could have spent that time shooting. The second reason is a new feature to Wilds called ammunition level. In previous games, ammunition level was replaced by different types of ammunition. Most ammo types in the game would have levels 1 through 3. You would have to craft each type of this ammunition separately, and they would be in a separate pouch for you to carry around. Now, all ammunition is pared down to a single level. Every ammunition type now has its own level, and the higher the level, the higher the damage with that specific ammo type. So, obviously, you want the highest level possible for the ammo that you're planning on using. Every ammo type also has an effective range, consistent across every gun. Essentially, you can't be too close or too far from a monster when shooting them, or else you'll suffer a massive damage penalty, i.e. your damage will go to 1. Spread ammo, for example, has an effective range very close to the enemy, so you'll need to be right in the danger zone, up against the monster, to be hitting for max damage. Pierce ammo, on the other hand, lets you hang back and shoot from a much safer distance, and is especially effective against monsters that fly, or really big monsters whose heads sit out of reach of most melee weapons. You can extend the maximum bullet distance using the skill Ballistics, which goes up to level 3 and can be used to help keep you in range of fast enemies, or can help you keep a little bit farther away from particularly dangerous enemies who you would prefer not to be so close to. So here is our first major change to Wilds. It used to be that every single gun had a different amount of recoil and reload speed for every ammo type. Because of that, not only did you need to pick an ammo type that had a favorable clip size, you also needed to make sure that your reload speed was fast enough and that your recoil between shots wasn't prohibitively slow. This has been completely removed in Wilds. Now, every gun has the same recoil and reload speed per ammo type. Recoil down and reload speed skills have accordingly been removed as well. This has some pretty major ramifications in terms of viable builds, which you will understand how that works shortly. Lastly, with only 2 exceptions, all ammo types in the game deal what's called shot type damage, one of 3 damage types in the game. In addition to being within your effective range for the ammo type you're using, you also want to be aiming at the enemy's weak spots to maximize your damage. To see which parts of the monster is weak to what damage types, you'll have to check your notebook. It's important to take advantage of weak zones when you're using an ammo type that has a finite amount of ammo, so you're not wasting it. Sometimes, the zones on a monster that are weak to shot type damage are unintuitive. The head is usually a safe bet, but shooting the wings off of a Rathalos, for example, can keep it stuck on the ground and net you unique rewards as well. With the common factors out of the way, let's get into the ammo types themselves. Normal ammo is typically seen as the default ammo type, but Wilds features a pretty major change to it. Instead of just a singular shot, normal ammo now consists of 3 consecutive shots. Now, this isn't that novel of a change anymore because, spoilers for future ammo types, almost every single ammo type has been changed to multi-hit. The problem with normal ammo though, other than being the default ammo type with no real advantages over the other types, is that there's a recoil animation between each of the 3 shots that locks you in place for a really long time. It prevents you from dodging or guarding, and so you spend a lot of time in the danger zone while you're waiting for your shot to finish. You have unlimited ammo and the damage isn't horrible, but this has definitely fallen pretty far down the ranks, whereas in Rise and World, it was definitely a reliable, honest ammo type that didn't require you to do any gimmicks. Here though, I would probably not recommend using normal ammo. Spread ammo is this game's shotgun. You have to be really close to the enemy, but it does the highest per shot damage, second only to Wyvern ammo. Unfortunately, spread ammo has also been pretty heavily gimped in the exact same way that normal ammo has, with the inclusion of an insane recoil animation after every single shot. It's still usable, sort of. You just have to plan around only taking 1 shot at a time, and you're also probably going to need max ballistics to give you enough wiggle room to take advantage of what little openings you're given, especially against someone fast like Odogaron. This is a sad day for spread ammo fans. It feels really weird to me that this one got nerfed so bad, considering it was never like a top tier ammo in the first place. Like, you leave piercing ammo untouched, but this is the one that you gotta nerf into the ground, really? But I think that generally this just sort of fits the pattern of the bow guns getting massively kneecapped all around in general. You know, don't get me wrong, the bow guns are still strong, but they've definitely taken away a lot of our fun toys. The one change that's kind of a nice bone to throw at spread ammo is the fact that it's now considered one of the default ammo types. So this means that every gun in the game can use it, and also that it has unlimited ammo. Which, you know, that's nice. Alright, piercing ammo is the bowgun's actual bread and butter ammo type. If you had a Game Shark where you could hack in perfect gear and make an insane optimized build, you could make a build noticeably stronger than Pierce ammo, but piercing ammo is still very, very good, and it's a contender for one of the best ammo types, even if you're just using armor that you found laying around on the floor. They've made it a default ammo type as well, meaning that it's just the replacement for normal ammo now. It fires very quickly, but they did add a somewhat slow reload animation to compensate. Piercing ammo is a little hard to describe. Essentially, your bullet has an active hitbox as it travels through a monster, and for every second it spends traveling through a monster, it does damage. The damage interval is way shorter than 1 second though. You're pretty much guaranteed to land 3 to 5 hits on a monster, even if you're shooting through the thinnest part. The distance Pierce ammo travels is also much shorter now, so you get less total hits to compensate for the faster interval. Overall, if you were only ever going to build a single gun to try out bowguns and see if you like the way it plays, I would build a Pierce ammo build. Elemental ammo has also undergone a pretty significant change since Rise. Previously, there were 2 elemental ammo types, normal elemental ammo and piercing elemental ammo. They functioned identically to normal ammo and pierce ammo, respectively, just now with elemental damage associated with it. The easiest way to explain the change is that normal elemental ammo has been removed, and piercing elemental ammo is now the only ammo type available. It's pierce ammo, but elemental. The The upside here is that this will always do more damage than Pierce, so long as you have the correct element against the monster you're fighting. The downside is that you're going to need multiple guns, one for each element, and you'll need to carry elemental ammo and the materials needed to craft it, since 60 shots isn't going to be enough to finish a monster off. This is now the best ammo type in the game, though it takes the most monetary and time investment. The one exception here is Dragon Elemental Ammo. It's functionally identical to all the other elements, but the damage is way higher and you can carry way less of it. This is nice to use as like a finishing move when the monster's down, but you shouldn't be building around it. It's more of a nice little thing to have around if it's there. Slicing ammo is unique in the sense that it's the only ammo type that deals cutting damage, meaning you can use it to cut monsters' tails. This was another staple damage type that has been absolutely taken out behind the shed in Wilds. The recoil between shots and the reload speed mean that you can pretty much only ever use this if you're absolutely sure a monster is not going to even look at you. It can be kind of nice in multiplayer for cutting tails, but that is pretty much it. To further downgrade it, it's also a heavy bowgun only ammo type now, so you can, for the most part, just pretend this one doesn't exist. The nerf is probably justified after how dominant it was in previous games, but as a huge slicing ammo fan, this one is also a disappointing nerf. And hey, speaking of previously dominant ammo types that have been absolutely nerfed into the ground, it's sticky ammo. So, I previously believed that sticky ammo did blunt damage, which was what caused the stuns, but it turns out that it just deals some typeless form of flat damage amount that also happens to cause stun. Your goal here is to hit a monster in the head until it's stunned, and then switch to another ammo type or a special ammo, and then you unload on it. The way that stun and all status ailments actually in this game work is that once you inflict it, the monster begins to build up a resistance to it. In Rise, that increase was pretty minimal, so you could chain stun enemies pretty effectively. Since Sunbreak though, and continuing on here to Wilds, the stun resist increases at a pretty massive rate, so realistically, even after using up all your ammo, you're probably only getting 2 stuns per fight. 1 stun per fight is nice enough that if you have access to the ammo type, you might as well, right? But you can't plan around this strategy at all in the same way that you could in previous games. Sticky ammo does kind of do a nice amount of damage though, and I think there's maybe a secondary usage here for using them in terms of opening wounds on monsters, but again, this is more of an incidental usefulness as opposed to something you're going to plan your build around. On a similar note, paralysis, sleep, and poison ammo all function identically. Hit the enemy anywhere and build up status ailments. Again, resistance builds up as you inflict, so you've got about 2 inflictions per hunt. Again, not something you build around, however, if a gun has access to poison or paralysis, that can be a pretty nice bonus, and it's worth remembering to include in your battle rotation. Exhaust works exactly the same way, but if you're new to the game, it might be hard to understand what Exhaust does just from the description. Exhaust makes a monster tired and has them walk around all slow, give them slow attacks, and mostly just causes them to stand around and huff for a while. It's actually pretty useful, equivalent to paralysis actually, so don't sleep on this ammo type. Wyvern ammo is another heavy bowgun only ammo type. There's been some weird changes to it. Originally a 1-shot per clip ammo with a massive charge time and a ton of recoil and reload, now nearly every gun for some reason has been given 2 shots of Wyvern fire capacity. Unfortunately, the damage has been nerfed into the ground, and so it's hard to recommend using over literally any other ammo type, even as a finishing move when the monster is stunned. You get a nice damage multiplier by waking up a sleeping monster with it, but that is genuinely the only time to ever use it now. The final ammo type is cluster ammo, and again, this is a nerfed into the ground, never use this ammo type. It fires as a mortar where you're locked in place and have to shoot the rockets in an arc over to the monster, but it all just takes so long and the damage isn't actually higher than just shooting it with regular ammo. You can't boost the damage with artillery or anything like that, it's just all risk for no reward. Pretty much only ever use this if the monster's like laying down on the ground stunned or stuck in a trap. With all of the ammo types out of the way, there is one more thing we need to know about both weapons, and that is bowgun customization. Every gun, light and heavy, has access to 2 mod slots, but what options you're able to fit into each slot is different. Normally, you have the choice between a magazine mod and a powder mod. Magazine mods increase the capacity of your selected ammo by 1, and powder mods increase the selected ammo level by 1. In the shop, you can see what possible mods are in each of the 2 slots. So the Esperanza cannon here, you can see it has 2 magazine slots, which is what is bringing the normal capacity from 4 up to 6. You can swap that to one of the 4 magazine types: normal, pierce, spread, and elemental. However, you can never swap a magazine into a powder mod, so you can never get the normal ammo level of this weapon above level 2. The second mod slot on a weapon is important because it contains 2 special mods that the first slot cannot possibly have. I'll talk about the special mods in each bowgun category separately, but generally, while you shouldn't build around this, having a mod in the second slot instead of a magazine upgrade is preferable. Powders can only ever be in the first slot, so keep an eye out for those as they're particularly valuable. So the final choice is, of course, whether or not to choose light bowgun or heavy bowgun. All the info we've learned so far has applied to both weapons, so this is going to be about the unique properties of each gun. The light bowgun is the more mobile option. You move significantly faster, but generally you have lower ammo capacity. However, you don't actually deal less damage than the heavy bowgun. The only difference in damage is reflected in the ammo levels and by the actual baseline stats of a weapon. There's no modifier that causes heavy bowgun to do more damage. However, light bowguns have a special feature that can crank its weapon damage way up and offset any possible drawbacks with regards to capacity or ammo level. If you look at the ammunition screen, you'll see the 2 little orange arrows, which indicates that the ammo can be rapid fired. In previous games, rapid fire was something that happened passively. You would shoot, and multiple rounds would fire at the cost of a single bullet in your clip. Here, however, rapid fire is a firing mode that requires you to charge it up either by waiting a certain amount of time or by hitting monsters in order to build a meter. It charges very fast, so as long as you're constantly shooting, it's going to be available very consistently throughout a fight. So naturally, you'll want to choose a gun that has the ability to rapid fire the ammo type that you want to use, which does pigeonhole you pretty significantly in terms of weapon choice, but such is life. Wilds features a new mechanic called wounding. After dealing a set amount of damage to an enemy body part, it will become wounded. Wounds glow red when you're aiming your bowgun, and you have 2 options in terms of exploiting this weakness. Firstly, you could just shoot them, dealing significantly increased damage to your shots that hit the wound, eventually causing it to disappear once the wound's health has been exhausted. On the other hand, you could hit R1 and prep a focus attack, which will deal percentage health damage and remove all the wound's health in a single go. Oftentimes, this massive burst of damage will cause a monster to recoil or sometimes fall to the ground and be stunned. As a bowgun user, you don't get iframes from your focus attacks like melee weapons do, so if you're in multiplayer, try and be a little careful with instantly popping any monster's wounds that are within easy range of a melee weapon. If you see one in a hard to reach spot though, that is your time to shine. The light bowgun focus attack is a grenade launcher. You can shoot it off pretty quickly, but it does have a fair amount of travel time to it, so you need to be a little careful about shooting it. You've got a limited number of charges for your focus attack that rebuild over time, unlike the melee weapons who can focus attack an unlimited number of times. You've got 2 choices for your special move, the Wyvern Blast Mine or Adhesive Ammo. So I'll explain both of these to you, but I'll tell you right now that I think both of these skills are okay at best and are not worth interrupting your normal shooting behavior in order to utilize them. The mine you simply place on the ground in front of you, and when activated, it will hit the enemy. You can either let the monster attack it or shoot it yourself, but the damage is okay. It can also activate multiple times, 3 to be specific, before breaking, so it's not a bad idea to drop one and then just sit on top of it while you shoot, waiting for an enemy to focus in on you and eventually damaging itself. Adhesive ammo is a little saw blade that you can stick to enemies. As you shoot it, it gains power, and after a certain amount of time has passed, it'll activate its damage, hitting the enemy in whatever part you stuck it with, meaning that it's good for tail cuts. The recharge time on these things is a little long though, so you really want to make sure you don't miss on this one. There's also a weird little skill you can use where, after firing a shot or dodging, you can press the circle button to crouch down and fire off a single, stronger shot. This isn't actually more DPS than firing normally, but it is more damage per shot, which is good if you're trying to conserve a little bit of ammo if you're using elemental ammo. Finally is the light bowgun unique weapon mods. If you have a magazine mod in the second slot, you get access to rapid fire magazine and the special ammo magazine. This increases your ammo capacity in rapid fire mode, or increases your number of mines or adhesive shots to 2. Personally, these ones are kinda useless. Rapid fire capacity is only good if you're using an elemental light bowgun, since that won't be an option in your second slot. Special ammo magazine you should just outright never use. If you have a mod slot in the second slot, you'll get access to Rapid Fire Mod or Special Ammo Mod, which both reduce the cooldown and charge time for the respective meters. Rapid Fire is the obvious choice here. Special Ammo is, again, never worth it. Heavy bowguns significantly reduce your movement speed, but to make up for that, you have a lot more of everything to work with. More ammo capacity, more ammo types, more special moves, and most importantly is a shield. The shield will protect you from an attack so long as you aren't doing any actions. Moving is fine, you don't need to be standing completely still, but you can't be shooting or dodging or reloading or anything like that. Blocking a hit won't completely nullify your damage unless the overall taken is very small, but you can use guard skills and decorations to significantly increase the effectiveness of your guard, allowing you to really tank up. You can also manually guard, and while this may seem pointless, the reasoning is that it allows you to time out a perfect guard, which will allow you to actually nullify all damage taken from a hit. If you guard any form of a melee attack, it allows the possibility of a clash, a new feature to this game where you knock over a monster after getting into a little button mash QTE cutscene. This works similarly to status ailments where monsters will build up a resistance to it as you do it. Usually it will happen twice per fight if you're getting hit a lot of times. Your first choice for skills is between Wyvern Heart and Wyvern Pierce. Wyvern Pierce fires a slow-moving projectile that damages enemies as it travels through them. It's like a super-powered version of Pierce ammo. This can be kind of good, but it's pretty slow and should mainly be used as a finishing move once the monster is downed. Wyvern Heart is a chain gun mode that deals pretty solid damage and inflicts wounds pretty easily as well, but you are very, very vulnerable when firing. In order to use either of these skills, you have to press the circle button in order to load in your special ammo, and it's worth noting that when this ammo is loaded in, you can't auto-guard with your shield at all. The really nice thing about these skills, though, is that they recharge very quickly and are also useful for conserving ammunition. The damage is also pretty good compared to previous versions of these from past games, making them definitely worth using. Your second choice is between Blast and Counter. Blast, honestly, I don't know what the vision is here. It's basically just cluster ammo, the damage is mediocre, it's slow, I just don't know what the use case is here. Counter is an offset counterattack you can hold and charge, meaning that if you see a big special move coming, you can interrupt it and deal a solid amount of damage while keeping yourself safe. It's a little slow, so it's not something you can do as like a quick reaction in the same way that you could with a perfect guard, but I think it's definitely worth taking with you into fights and just looking for opportunities, especially considering you then knock an enemy down for easy damage. The range is really low on it though, so it's not like this is a ranged counterattack or anything like that. The heavy bowgun focus attack requires you to crouch down for a second before you're able to fire, but the travel time for the bullet is very fast, unlike the light bowgun grenade. The heavy bowgun also has two unique weapon variables called base type and ignition recovery. Your ignition recovery determines how fast your Wyvern Heart and Wyvern Pierce skills recharge. At level 1, it takes 1 minute to recharge, and at level 3, it drops to 45 seconds. There's a skill in the game called Focus, which is also meant to make this meter charge 15% faster. However, it calculates that 15% of 40 seconds, not of the original 60. So using 3 skill points to get Focus 3 only to bring your time down to 40 seconds isn't worth it at all. Your base type gives you bonus damage based on the type of frame. Standard/Ignition is the baseline, no bonuses. Ignition mode causes you to gain bonus damage when using your Wyvern Heart and Wyvern Pierce, and Standard mode gives your regular ammunition like Normal, Elemental, Wyvern, Cluster, all those get bonus damage. Each level is a 10% bonus, so Ignition Mode 2 means 20% more Wyvern damage. Standard Mode 2, 20% ammo damage. There's one final big new mechanic to know about, and that's the new weapon crafting system. Artian weapons? By fighting certain monsters, you can get weapon part drops, and then assemble 3 of those into a weapon of your choice. Each part has an associated element, and either an attack or an affinity buff. For most weapons, choosing multiple different elements results in a non-elemental weapon. However, there's no reason to do that here because it doesn't give you any actual benefit. The number of same element parts that we use determine elemental ammo and capacity, so pretty much the only useful gun we're able to make with this system are elemental weapons. However, they are very good, so this is what you're eventually going to want to work towards in order to create the best elemental weapons available to you, especially because a high-rank Artian weapon comes with 3 level 3 deco slots. Decorations are now significantly more important due to the changes made to the overall progression mechanic in Wilds. In Rise, armor sets had a wide variety of skills on them, and you could craft a ton of the mid-tier decos to fill in the gaps. Here though, armor sets have a much more restricted offering of skills, and you're expected to use the randomly farmed decorations in order to fill in those gaps. Because of that, there's something I want to mention here before I get into skill descriptions and build examples. Farming decorations is completely random, and not all decorations are created equal. And so if you want a strictly 100% optimal damage build, there is an insane amount of RNG involved. However, there's a community subset of Monster Hunter players who do things like speed runs and showcase runs of killing monsters as fast as possible. 2 days into the game's release, I was seeing sub 1 minute monster kills with the heavy bowgun, and those sorts of videos are going to get more and more popular and common. A lot of these types of guys hack in their own decorations and armor for the sake of skipping over the randomness to gear farming. This isn't like a call-out post or anything. Most of these guys admit that they do it, and I don't care either way. The only thing is that I see so many people in the comments of these videos asking for the builds for the purposes of copying it. This is usually a bad idea because these builds, like I said, are built around having these custom decorations, and if you don't have the same ones, the builds are not going to perform in the way that you're expecting. You're gonna watch a heavy bowgun speedrun video, watch someone chain stun a monster to death, and say, oh, I'll do that too! All of the armor and skill decisions that they make are going to be based around the fact that they have access to these perfect 100% optimized decorations. It is very, very hard to perma-stun a monster through raw damage alone, and if you are trying to do that with a worse build, it's just not gonna work out the way that you're expecting. I don't say this because I want you to use my builds. I will never know that you do this. I don't care about that. I mainly say this for your own sake if you are new to the game and avoiding the frustration of wondering why it seems like you aren't able to replicate what you're seeing in speedrun videos that people are posting. Similarly, my read and rating of skills and the advice that I'm going to give you on what skills you should prioritize is going to be pretty heavily based around what is easy to get a hold of and what would be useful in the widest variety of cases. If someone is killing a monster in under 2 minutes, they are probably not going to have any survivability skills in their build. All of those skill slots are going to be put towards damage so you can perma-stun the monster. But because you are probably not going to be able to perma-stun the monster with the decorations that you have access to through normal gameplay, you probably need some defensive skills. And so that is why the builds that I recommend are going to be pretty wildly different from the speedrun builds that you see, and this is generally the reason why. So, in Monster Hunter Rise, there was a pool of non-negotiable, mandatory skills you needed to use, and almost all of them have been either removed from the game or gutted and nerfed very badly. Spare shot is gone, recoil and reload up are gone, capacity up is gone. But the good news is that we have a new pool of pretty decent new skills to work with. Let's talk about some of the bowgun specific staples though. Ballistics is really valuable. It increases the range of your attacks, but noticeably only the max range. It doesn't increase the minimum range at all, meaning that monsters can still get close to you to avoid max damage hits. If you've got spare slots, this is a great one to throw in, especially if you're fighting a really big monster, or if you're using spread ammo and you just need a little bit more reach. Tetra Shot comes as default on a lot of guns, and it's very weird. It increases the damage of your 4th and 6th shots, but not by a lot, so you should never plan around this. It's just a thing that is there and nice to have. It's important to know that the 4th and 6th shot bonus all need to be in the same magazine, so if you only have 3 shots in your magazine total, you'll never get the bonus damage. Opening shot is deceptively useful in a way that the name of it would never actually convey to you. So it gives you a negligible damage bonus on the first shot after reloading, but it also boosts your reload speed. This isn't enough to offset a really slow reload like on slicing or sticky ammo, but it's really nice for regular piercing ammo, and it comes by default on a fair number of guns. Special Ammo Boost increases the damage of the light bowgun, mines, and adhesive shots, and the heavy bowgun Wyvern Heart and Wyvern Pierce. For light bowguns, this is worthless, but a nice little bonus if it happens to be there. I've said a few times that I like Wyvern Heart now for the purpose of offsetting your ammo cost, and that's because elemental ammo is kind of expensive to craft. Wyvern ammo can keep that manageable by reducing the amount of crafting you need to do, so 20% bonus damage to Wyvern Heart, that's a pretty nice boost. Slugger and Artillery are both for sticky ammo. You can throw these in the dumpster. Critical Element boosts your elemental damage as long as you're landing critical hits. This is really useful as long as you pair it up with something like Weakness Exploit. Lastly, the skills that boost the damage of a singular ammo type have been demoted to 5% for a level 3 deco slot. Never use these. Let's go into armor skills and set bonuses and general skills. I'm going to start with my two favorite skills in the game, Evade Extender and Evade Window. Extender increases the distance you can dodge roll, and Evade Window gives you way more iframes during your roll. Having somewhere around Evade Extender 2 and Evade Window 3 basically just turns the game into Dark Souls. You can essentially reaction dodge through enemy attacks. It is insanely useful for keeping yourself alive, especially for the light bowgun. If you're struggling to stay alive in fights, I would highly recommend using these skills on any weapon in the game. On the flip side, if you're playing heavy bowgun, you can enhance your shield skills to significantly increase your survivability. Guard Up allows you to guard against attacks you normally wouldn't be able to block, which is really nice for the endgame tempered monsters who all do massive explosion moves that might catch you off guard since your movement speed is so slow. The skill, just called Guard, reduces the flinch amount while guarding, and it reduces the stamina cost, which is helpful but not as useful anymore since your stamina regenerates pretty quickly, even while aiming and shooting. You can also offset with lesser cost skills like the 1-slot decoration required for Constitution. While you're there, Offensive Guard gives you a 15% damage bonus for perfect guarding and attack, which is a pretty huge bonus for such a low cost. You also aren't really punished at all for messing up the timing on the heavy bowgun. If you mess up, you'll just regular guard the attack. If you can find a deco for this, it can be really valuable for single player play. Weakness Exploit gives you a high amount of crit rate bonus when hitting an enemy weak spot, which you should essentially always be doing because the bowgun gives you that amount of freedom. While this is a great skill, it's up for you to determine whether or not you just want the affinity bonus, because some of the other new skills I'm about to talk about will give you multiple bonuses in exchange for having slightly more restrictive requirements. Flayer is a new skill to take advantage of the new wounding mechanic. At max level, it makes wounding enemies much easier, which is good because opening a wound and destroying it with a focus attack deals a percentage of the monster's max HP, which is obviously very useful. This synergizes with existing skill Partbreaker, which boosts the damage of said focus attacks, so combining the two can result in a pretty substantial boost to your damage output. Peak Performance boosts your damage output by 20 when at full health, which is good for light bowguns whose entire purpose is to keep you safely away from the monster. But raw damage bonuses have become slightly less useful now that other skills that do a lot more are in the game, similar to Weakness Exploit, but Peak Performance is on several kind of good pieces of equipment, so if you can find a deco for it, you might consider maxing it. Foray is a very interesting skill. Foray boosts your damage by 15 and your affinity by 20 when an enemy is either poisoned or paralyzed. If your gun has the ability to use poison ammo, this can really kind of juice your numbers. The biggest downside to this is that it can be kind of hard to tell when exactly poison has worn off of an enemy and you need to reapply it, but otherwise, this is a pretty decent option if you're using a gun with access to one of those two ammo types. Burst, I want to talk about real quick because I think it's easy to be tricked into thinking this skill is good, but do not be fooled. It is not good for bowguns. At level 5, and with the Otogaron set bonus that boosts this skill even farther, it increases your attack stat by 30, which for heavy bowguns will be less than 10% of your damage bonus, so you're giving up 4 armor slots for an extra 1 damage per shot. That's not really worth it. But the problem is that on melee weapons, it gives your elemental damage a bonus as well in terms of conferring that bonus onto your weapon's elemental stat. Bowguns do not have an elemental stat, so they don't receive that bonus, so you're missing out on half of the bonus of the skill burst. So yeah, this is a good skill on melee weapons, don't use it on bowguns. Agitator is another skill that'll boost both attack and crit rate, making it more valuable than either on their own. At max level, it's plus 20 attack and plus 15% crit when a monster is enraged, which honestly is most of the time, so this is a great skill. Finally, I want to talk about some of the specific armor set bonuses and the skills that'll play into their strengths. The Arkveld Hunter and Vitality boost your HP as you attack or as you break monster wounds. So, having tried the Arkveld Hunter set, this seems pretty bad. It supposedly heals as you attack, but it definitely doesn't restore health per shot. Here's me using it with max recovery boost skill points. I think it might give you heals periodically at certain damage thresholds, but it's basically so low it's not worth using. Decimator 2 from the Guardian Arkveld set is actually pretty good though. You get a fair amount of heals back from destroying wounds, and the armor it comes with has Flay, making wounds easier to produce. This is a great defensive set for something like spread ammo, where you're going to need a little bit more defensive options to stay in the game. Enemies can still chip you down even through your shields, so being able to heal back from wounds is really useful. The Gore Magala set bonus is really strong, but you're gonna have to trade off a lot of your defensive options. That being said, there are just a million ways to enhance this set in a way that is very, very funny. The Gore Magala set will inflict the Frenzy status on you. If you're able to do enough damage, you'll get a temporary damage bonus. Coalescence gives you more elemental damage after recovering from any status ailment, like Frenzy. The skill Antivirus makes curing Frenzy even easier and gives you an affinity bonus after curing it. So you can see where if you have an elemental bowgun with decent affinity, you can get the numbers pretty high on this one. Throw in a few sustainability skills in there and you got a pretty good build. Or you could throw that in the dumpster and instead go with the skill Critical Element, which further increases your elemental damage on crits and any other skills that boost your crit rate. The Gore Magala set is essentially the strongest elemental ammo armor, and elemental ammo is currently the strongest in the game, so this is currently what you're looking at in terms of an endgame, post-game set. Alright, final section of the game. Here I'm just going to put you in a little bib and onesie and put you in your high chair and spoon feed you some builds to use for each ammo type. However, I am going to use my authorial power to only bother to make builds for ammo types that are not horrible. Okay, maybe one that's horrible. An example of a horrible build would be normal ammo. Normal ammo is pretty simple to examine in terms of the weapons. For heavy bowguns, you have two options: the G Eternal Palamedes, which has a higher raw but -10 affinity, or the Precipice Malmium, which I think is objectively worse, but it doesn't have negative affinity. The Precipice is also the best non-Artian ice gun though, so you can save yourself some farming if you don't want to invest a bunch of time into making the absolute best version of a bad build. For light bowguns, you can do either the Guardian Fulgur Snipe or the Washluder. They're basically identical for normal ammo, but if you want to be prudent with your choices, the Ingenath gun is also one of the best thunder ammo guns in the game, and has access to paralysis ammo, so I would kind of recommend that one. For normal ammo, you want to be a little farther away from your enemy, so we're going to prioritize movement over tankiness. I know I complained about normal ammo getting kind of gutted, but I gotta be honest, I feel like I've landed in a usable spot for this build. The Dahad Head, Blongo Chest, and a Challenger Talisman level 2 will give you max Agitator, the two Arkveld pieces gives you Wex 4, and the Balahara legs for Evade Extender. The legs are the first to go when you get some good decorations. You could swap these out for basically any offensive set that has a slot where you could otherwise put in an Evade Extender decoration. Otherwise, this is a very customizable build where you've got plenty of room to throw in comfort skills, or you can go all in on damage. This isn't going to be an amazing build, and each shot leaves you pretty unsafe, but as long as you're careful, you know, it's not going to be pretty, but you'll be able to get the job done. For spread ammo, I'm going to be real with you, I'm only making a heavy bowgun set for this video. You can do a rapid fire spread light bowgun, but it's so inefficient and goofy that I'm going to force you to just do the math yourself on this one. Heavy bowgun makes the most sense here, and again, it's the Palamedes gun we're going to be working with. With 4 pieces of Guardian Arkveld and a pair of Agitator pants, we can get max Flayer, 4 Agitator, some Partbreaker, some Wex, and some deco slots to fill out the gaps. This also ends with us having the armor set bonus where we heal every time we destroy a wound. For decos, I really like Offensive Guard. It's a 15% damage bonus when it's active. At least one level of ballistics is nice, 2 or 3 would probably be ideal, and then you can max out Partbreaker and Agitator with your remaining slots. With my remaining weapon deco slots, I filled up with Guard Up and Guard. The goal here is to inflict a ton of wounds onto the enemy and then exploit them for massive damage. This is a pretty fun build to play, and it's also very, very safe. Pierce ammo is very mechanically similar to normal ammo, so our build is going to sort of rhyme. Your heavy bowgun option is the Gormagala, but you have a ton of light bowgun choices. Arcveld, Ray Dow, Rathian, or the Gore gun all work, depending upon what types of secondary ammo you want access to. For the sake of changing things up, I'm going to be using the Rathalos gun because it has access to poison ammo. The build I went for here is for maximizing crit rate. You don't have a ton of deco slots on this setup, but once you have a ton of super optimized decorations, you can be smart and good enough at the game to tweak this build to your liking. 4A boosts your damage and crit rate when the enemy's poisoned, which will be all the time. Weakness Exploit juices that rate even farther, and Evade Window helping out a bit in terms of defense. To fill out the deco slots, I always recommend Evade Extender. That would fit nicely in the head slot, but if you just want to go all in on offense, I would finish up with Wex 5, and then see if you can get some crit boost in there since your affinity is going to be pushing really high on this build. Put Ballistics 1 in the small weapon slot or something like that. I threw together a heavy bowgun build for this as well and had a little bit of fun with it. It's a Partbreaker wound build that is surprisingly effective for having almost no actual damage skills. I went out of my way to give it some extra defense and utility as opposed to just maxing out your damage output, and yeah, this one functions pretty well too. Okay, it's time to stop messing around. Here's the show. This is the build. Full Gormagala set gives you a Frenzy bonus, level 4 Agitator for damage and crit, Coalesce, Antivirus, Evade Window 2. Build an Artian elemental weapon, and the build is done. This is a great example of how decorations can be really valuable for a build because you got a lot of free slots on this one, so if you don't have perfect decorations, you're going to be doing a lot of taking what you can get. For this Thunder Gun, I used Crit Element 3, Thunder Attack 3, Offensive Guard because I don't really have anything else, Maximum Might because I don't really have anything else, Partbreaker because I don't really have anything else. It's easy to imagine where this build goes, though, if you could pick out any decoration you want. You max out Agitator, you max out Coalescence, you maybe throw some crit boost in there. But even with just some mid-level decos, you can see how this build functions. You might be looking at these numbers and saying, oh, those look kind of high, and yep, they're really high. The Corruption Mantle is especially good on this build because it's just such a power multiplier. It's just so obviously the most effective build in the game. I would love to see other ammo types eventually buffed up to, you know, maybe not this level, but somewhere in the vicinity of this level. So I know it does kind of suck the wind out of the sails of all of the other ammo types and all of the other builds that piercing elemental ammo is just so obviously the best ammo type in the game. But I had a couple of ideas for builds that might be fun just for the sake of doing something different. So I want to